Well, the first time that I came to this theater, I was a child, and I was so small I had to sit in my daddy's lap to see the stage. And my father was blind, but he loved theater. And any number of times when there'd be a good show in town and my mother wasn't able to come with him, he'd get me out of school to come to the Opera House, especially. Now, he never missed an Algie Fields minstrel. That was part of it.
Mrs. Mary Earl Smith, like many in her generation, remembers the heyday of the Grand. At the turn of the century, a night on the town in Meridian meant donning gowns, top hats, and canes for a grand night at the Grand Opera House. For this small railroad town, the Opera House was the center of cultural activity with concerts, plays, vaudeville, and minstrel shows. When the age of the talkies came, the Grand drew its last curtain and closed forever. It was the short forever. Meridian has rediscovered the Grand, and it's being restored.
Helen Hayes performed here.
Executive Director of the project, Elliott Street.
And I had been following the progress of the Opera House since 1965 when I was TV camera operator at WTOK TV here. I watched Willie Hatcher heat mount those pictures in that album, and I walked up to him and, you know, we were basically allowed to do anything we wanted to in the newsroom because, you know, news didn't happen all the time. So I walked in, I looked over his shoulder, I said, Willie, what are you up to there? You know, and he says, I'm going to win a prize. I'm going to win the prize for the most outstanding civic project that would help bring people into Meridian and all that. So that was the beginning nucleus when he said, yeah, it's restoration of the Opera House. And I said, what Opera House? And that was basically it. And from 65 on, I followed the rumblings and the grumblings of getting this thing off the ground. Some of the premier artists that played here were Helen Hayes. She played in Pollyanna when she was around 12 here. Lon Chaney, although we're not sure whether it was just in the movie that he played here, The Phantom of the Opera. Otis Skinner. We have records that Sarah Bernhardt were here, or at least we're trying to find the records, I should say. That's one of the legends that's been handed down. Enrico Caruso, perhaps. Let's see, who else might ring a bell? George Gershwin. We're trying to find out whether George was really here or not.
Mary Garden played here. She had a concert here. So did Schumann Hank. We were really we just attracted the big stars now. People came, they expected to come to the Opera House when they visited anybody in Meridian. They expected that. It was the thing to do. You had the feeling that you were in high society when you were in the Grand Opera House in Meridian, Mississippi. Even after it was a movie house, we were on the Keith Orpheum circuit. We always had some sort of live entertainment here, almost up to the very last gasp. But, well, when we knew it was going to close, my little brother and I, we were just heartsick. There was nothing like the Opera House.
When it was closed, it stood as some architectural memorial to a time long past, unopened and unexposed to light, lookers, or takers. Somehow it escaped becoming a restaurant or a fancy downtown health club. So even now, during its rebirth, the excitement of other opening nights still hangs in the air.
You just can't say too many nice, wonderful, beautiful, luscious things about it, because that's the way it was. You see, they didn't spare any expense when they built this opera house. And as one of the builders said one time, only the finest was good enough. That's what went into this place. There was nothing shoddy about it. There was nothing cheap. Everything was top-notch and plush.
And it was quite a beautiful place when it was first built. Everything was gold and gilded. It was very ornate.
There's several features about the box seats that are interesting. Of course, we've got a good bit of historic fabric left in the draperies here, plus a little dirt and dust. The relief figures, or the relief portions of the columns, are all paper mache. And then, of course, the rug in here, we're not real sure, but since it's a low trafficked area, it's a good possibility that it, too, is original fabric. Between the original lighting systems here, you have the gas light system. Of course, that lit the entire building as well as the auditorium space. And then, of course, the modern lighting system, which, of course, was the first generation of incandescent. Of course, here is the communication system. It's actually a little blowpipe that actually has a whistle in it, and you can actually talk up and give cues to the men up above there. You can imagine all of the workers. I guess this is why labor unions came in. You ended up with nothing to do up here from time to time. They ended up carving their names in the wall here. It says 1907, HCP, ooh, $10,000 or something.
Overseeing all the changes of the Opera House has been the grand old lady.
Well, she may be shabby, but as somebody once said in an article they wrote about the Opera House, she's still a grand old lady.
She'll still be there for the next grand opening of the Grand Opera House.
Hatcher.
Sorry, we can do it again.
Hatcher goes beforehand.
My guest today is Miss Midge Hale Hatcher Hannah. She is a 90-year-old native woman who is married to Mr. Charlie Hatcher, a manager from the Grand Opera House. He worked there when great performers came. Our other guest is Elliot Street, who is a professional performer.
Sorry, that was very good. We came back to help her story. Very
Don't get shifty-eyed,
I'm
okay?
trying.
Just look at the
If she
camera.
would hold it up,
There.
I have a scrapbook here that Mr. Eric Swanson has done for a project for the Boy Scouts, and it has old clippings about the Opera House. Do either one of y'all remember most of any of these clippings?
I'm afraid I'd be a little young for that, but
Well, I remember the Marx Rothenberg building. I went to work there when I was, 1918, when I graduated from high school. And as I was telling the ladies, I worked up in what they call the boat. But it was, they had then these cups that you put in the pipes to come down at the
Right.
sails and come up to the cash board. And we had two girls over there to answer the cups. And then Macy Biggs and I worked over on the desk. And in the evenings, we take the tickets and write them up in the books according to the departments, put the sales in there. Then those books and the cash was taken down to the main office in the first floor, where about 3 people worked. At that time, Mr. Irving Harrington, which is quite an old Meridianite, he was office manager down there. And we could, from the boat, we could see all over the store, see people that come in and out. And that was in 1918. Then later, I went, left there and went into Ready to Wear. But I wound up back at Marx Rothenberg as buyer and made several trips to New York. And in my visits up there and going to the Opera House, none of them were near as fine and pretty as our Opera House in Meridian. They, where they put this, I don't know whether it's still a shoe store there right next to Marx's. But when they built that is when they did away with the steps.
yeah, that was Vanity Shoes.
And the steps weren't straight. They were kind of curved and a beautiful marble and had the black wrought iron by the steps. And from the steps were just a few yards of that marble before you entered the Opera House. And the boxes, they were just beautiful. They had lovely little chairs. Is it all right for me to talk with my hands?
Please.
And little narrow backs, and they were red and trimmed in the gold. And it's a shame that they were ever taken out of there, but we had one merchandise man at Marx's one time that gave the different girls those chairs. And Augusta Stuckey told me one time she had one. And it could be possible, if you wanted to, her daughter, Nancy Ellis, might have that chair if it would mean anything to maybe get one. And she could tell you some of the other girls that were working there at the time that would have one. And if you could secure one or two of them, they were just lovely little chairs. And I think maybe it was 4 or 5 to a box. And the box up on the right-hand side of the Opera House was always reserved for the Rothenbergs. And we had just the very best plays right off of Broadway there. And when it didn't book in plays, and they had had picture shows. And Charlie had, I don't remember whether it was a 6 or 8-piece orchestra down in the pit. And Mr. Howard Lane, which was well known here, was the director of the orchestra, and he played a clarinet. And John Strobel, which is Strobel family, is quite an old Catholic family in Meridian.
That's my uncle.
Your uncle?
That's
God
my
bless
great
you.
uncle.
Well, he played the violin. He was a good-looking man. And I've forgotten the name of the show that was here, but this beautiful blonde was in it. Well, when that was love at first sight, it just fell right up. And they married. And she lived here in Meridian quite a long while. Didn't they have one or two children? Do you remember that?
One.
One pretty little girl. And they moved from here to Texas. So I lost track of them. But we were just real excited over that love affair. And then I've forgotten who played the drums. But we had a little Frenchman from New Orleans, Karugi, I think was his name, or something like that, that played the saxophone. And he and his wife were divorced. This is a little side note, but it would tickle me. And when it come time to pay alimony, they'd have to threaten to put him in jail every month. I thought it was very cute. And I'm going to tell you another cute thing. I maybe shouldn't call the name. But these two COVID boys, they came down through the ceiling of the opera, roof of the opera house some way, and took some of the music instruments, and then brought them back around there and wanted to sell them to them. And it's quite a thing. And they, at the time that Opera House closed, we had gone on the coast for a weekend trip, and they had the fire, which was just made Charlie sick. He felt like maybe if he'd been at home on the job, but that's when it closed. And I think that must have been about 23 or 4, I don't know, just.
Yeah, the actual, I mean, that may have been the first part of it closing, but they actually padlocked it, I think, October 1st, 1927.
Yeah, well,
But
this
now,
this
before
was,
that, I think
this
they-
was maybe 24
We
or
have some
5, or they
programs
might
in
have padlocked it
1926.
at the 5, but that's
Mhm.
when even the picture stopped. So
Right.
maybe 27 was about the right
Right.
time. But
Now,
that was the end of us at the Opera House.
Was the little orchestra called the Sanger Orchestra?
No, I don't think so, because it used to be a singer theater
Right.
that would confuse it with the Opera House. I just think it was the Opera House orchestra,
Mhm.
and but it was a good orchestra, and we had a little old Model T Ford, and I've sat in that Ford out there many a night waiting for the Opera House to close for us to go home. And Charlie later was connected with the Temple, but Mr. Rice was manager of that when they opened the Temple
Right.
Theater around there. But he was a big Shriner, and he worked then with Marvin Cooper with the Shriners, and they have all their activities now around there. But the
Do you remember any particular shows? I mean, you said a few Broadway shows. I was wondering if there's anything in particular you remember.
Because the Algier Field Minstrel was here every year, and to give you the correct name of them, I just couldn't right offhand. It was just so many of them, and at the time, and I wish I could think of the music comedy that her uncle and cousin and this beautiful blonde married. I know it was a musical, but I don't know the name.
Let's see, No Nanette played here, but I don't think it stayed long enough for anybody to fall in love.
Well, I remember that, No Nanette.
And then 45 Minutes from Broadway played here, Georgie and Cole.
And I think Springtime, it seems to me it was, that was a name of a musical. And the rest of them I just.
Now then, you were describing the staircase. The box office itself was over on the right.
On the
Yeah.
right of and they didn't go straight up. They had just a slight curve, which was graceful and pretty, and the marble was just lovely, you know, and with the black froth iron that in it.
Now then, the box office itself, was it a glass box office?
Just partly glass, and
So
not
the
very-
center section
not
where the
very
window
large.
was, there was a glass. And
Yeah.
then on the side, was it wooden or was it caved?
It was just a wooden, not very wide.
Mhm.
It was just a curve like most boxes,
Right.
see.
Now then, was it, shall we say, it came out and had an angle across, or was it square across?
No, it was more, it looked like it kind of set back a little, and it wasn't, just most of the front of it was noticeable.
Okay, so
Right, as
the
it-
actual back of the space was behind the staircases, in
Yes,
other words. So
uh-huh. You only saw the front of it as you came up these steps.
Okay.
And it was right to the right of the steps as you went in.
Okay. That's very interesting, because I've never had anybody be able to give me a good description of
Uh-huh.
how the box
Well,
office
as I
was set
remember,
up.
the entrance was nearer where that shoe store is now.
Mhm.
And stairs was so pretty with that lovely marble. But all you saw was kind of the front of the box
Mhm.
office.
Right. You mentioned that you worked at the end of the pneumatic tubes. We found some of those tubes
You
over
did?
where they had just stored them after the place
Well, you see,
closed.
they had a cash register, in each department then. And the notion, over in the men's department, and to each department had theirs. And they would go there and put the ticket, if it was a charge, or the cash ticket and money, fasten the cup and shoot it up the pipe. And when it bumped up there, you could hear it all over the store. That was old
Now,
pipe.
you talk about the boot. Would that be like corresponding to a mezzanine?
The
A
box.
boat, I mean. The boat.
No, it was just like a little offset balcony, you might say.
Mhm.
And had just a few steps from the first floor right up to it. And then the big office was downstairs as you came into the door of Mark's Rock. And down in the office then was working, and Jessie Dixon, Johnny Dixon, is his name, her son, she was worked in, at that time, Marks Rodenberg had a wholesale department up on 4th floor. And Jessie worked in the little office of the wholesale department. And they had 3 salesmen. Mr. William Wright's father, if you remember William, you probably don't,
No.
because, and Mr. Those 3 sales, Walter Gilmore, you know his son, Dr. Gilmore.
Yes, Sonny.
And Walter and I used to go together. In fact, we were going together at the time Charlie and I were going together. So we had quite a, and those men down there would just tease the socks off me about Walter Gilmore. Said he's, at that Christmas, they gave these lovely ivory sets, comb and brush and everything to go with it, buff and all. And Mr. Wright and them would tell Oscar that, tell Walter that Charlie Hatcher was going to comb his hair with his brush and comb. And I got where I wouldn't go downstairs because they teased me so much. But
Now, let me ask you something as far as what we're kind of curious about. If, say you're on the lobby level after you go up the long flight of stairs,
yeah.
and you're in the lobby level, at the end there was a mirror. Now, behind that was the front part of the Opera House store. There was part of Marx's in there, rather than being part of the lobby.
Well, that was the economy department.
Okay.
Over there downstairs, right next to the Opera House.
Mhm.
And see, the main ready-to-wear was on 2nd floor.
Mhm.
And that part of Mark's is there. And then the men's clothing. The men's clothing were right up front, right next to the Opera House.
Mhm.
And that's when the Mr. Lamar Robinson and those men, they had a big men's department. That was up front. And then to the back entrance was the economy department. And then you enter over into the main building of Marx's.
Mhm.
And that's when the office was down there, and then all the notion department, and they had the side entrance is all downstairs is so different now from what it used to be.
Yes.
It just makes you sick. And I understand they're closing too. They
Well,
have bank.
I heard that they were consolidating. I don't know that they're closing.
Well, somebody told me they were bankrupted. But Marx Rothenberg and William Klein and Company which was right over,
Where the Sears building
Sears
was.
building.
Now
They
deposit
used to
guarantee.
be two of the finest department stores in Mississippi. And Marx's was just tops. And when William Klein closed, Sears went in there. And of course Marx's, when they let a chain take over, it just began to go down, down, down. But it used to be a very, very fine store. And it wasn't any finer set of Jews in the world than the Rothenbergs. And the,
Some of their descendants were in town the other day.
yeah. Well, Rebecca Rothenberg and my sister were very good friends. In fact, she married Strauss, M.R. Strauss's father. And Lee worked for him a long while. And I've got a waste paper basket in my room, needlepoint, that Rebecca did for Lee in the family. And when I was by Marx Rothenberg, they'd have me go up to little Miss Marx Rothenberg was a lovely little person, very thin, but just a southern lady. And they'd have me go up there and see what she wanted and ready to wear when I made my trips. And I had one little house that had just beautiful clothes for her, so I could always satisfy. But and at one time when Leslie Rush was operating on her for appendicitis, for kidney trouble or something, and he wanted give her a transfusion while she was on the table. And my blood and Mr. Ross's, who was manager of the economy department, matched. And it was late one Saturday afternoon. I don't know whether I'm boring y'all now, whether you rather just ask me questions.
No, go ahead and
to get you
finish the
in
story.
it.
I'll see if I can't come up with some more questions about that.
So they sent for us to come up to Rush's to give a transfusion. And when I got up there, at that time the Army people were here, and some of those Army doctors used to come in. And he started in one arm and had a little trouble, and started in the other. And so Leslie said, well, don't put your midge up. I said, oh no, it's here if you want to take it. So they finally got it and gave her a transfusion, Miss Mark. So the next day, her three daughters were here. She had Rebecca, I can't name them all right now, but it was 4 girls and 3 boys. One of the boys was killed, you know, out on 27th Avenue night. And so they sent me this beautiful bag, and in the notions we had those gorgeous Madeira handkerchiefs made as embroidered all over. I think they sold about $4.50, and they sent me that for the little bit of blood I gave. So that was interesting. Now you.
Okay, Marty said she had one.
How many entrances did you know of to the Opera House?
Did I what on?
How many entrances did you know of? That went
Oh, well, they had the back where you'd go up to the steps to the
To the scene,
to the
underneath
seat
the stage.
on there, and then to the dressing rooms that were back there, and then the front entrance. That was the only entrance to that back.
Now, what about the fire escapes? Do you remember ever going out those ways or in those ways from the Newberry building and from the
No,
Mark side?
I didn't. I couldn't tell you the exact location of it. But I can remember those gorgeous big curtains. They were big and heavy, the whole width of the stage. And when they take 2 or 3 men to let them up and down. And then, of course, the scenery, they had so much of it back there because the plays they'd have would call for different scenery.
Right.
And they just had it back there, just ready to put down. It was really tops and everything fine for opera.
And you said the curtain. I was wondering, do you know what a French swag is when it goes up like this, or did it all go up at the same time?
It all went up one time.
Okay, now, did it have advertising on it, or did it have, do you remember
No,
any?
it was just a pretty curtain, the main curtain when they, between acts and when they let the main curtain down and at the end. It was just a pretty curtain, the whole width of the stage, one big curtain. What else you want to know?
Do you remember any of the certain scenery? Do you remember anything about all the scenery?
No, darling. Of course, we did have a bedroom scenes, when they have living room scenes for these plays and all, just a natural living thing. But one particular item in it, I wouldn't remember. I wouldn't pay that close.
Can we stop for a second? Let me read. Okay,
Fifth
why don't you
Street.
describe that again just for a second? The streetcars ran where?
Just right down in the front of, middle of Fifth Street around, and they go out 8th Street and then 7th Street, and they right out where the Matahutchee Hospital was, where they make the loop to turn to come back. And I lived on 38th Avenue and 9th Street, and they ran right on 8th Street. And we used to go down there and put pins on the streetcar track and let them run over to make the scissors out of it. And then my sister and I had 2 sisters, Margaret and I, and Mama used to go to town. She said, now don't y'all leave this house. And we'd go down the hill and play with the boys and play ball and all. And every time we hear the streetcar run, we'd run up the hill to see if Mama got off. But one time we didn't make connection. She come down and she made connection with us. Yeah, there's come the streetcars, and little Mrs. Can, Ed Can's mother, she had a little electric car. I can see her sitting up in there now, going all over town in that little, it looked like a little glass house on wheels. And she worked with the shears this way. And they'd say, here comes Miss Can in the glass house.
Do you remember when the husbands used to let the ushers send candies and flowers?
Do I, darling? The first box of Whitman sample I ever ate was sent to me in the Opera House. And at that time, Dan and Abe Never had a cigar store right over where Cress's used to be, right on the corner there. And of course, during intermission, if you didn't have a box of candy and sometime flowers sent in, you just wasn't in it. So I know about that candy. And I laughed and told Charlie Hatch after we married, I said, I think you're still paying Nellis for candy you sent me.
Now, Lyden Cheatham's was right next door.
Oh,
Did they
yes.
sell candies too?
Yes, different places, and depending upon where the men had accounts, they'd have it sitting in.
And
But they'd come pass it down the aisle, you know, and of course you were thrilled to death when your box got there. And you pass it around to the ones that were sitting by you.
Do you remember what types of clothes people used to wear back then?
They used to wear just your Sunday clothes, your best street clothes, never any formals to the Opera House. But they used to have just really dress up, and sometimes your boyfriend would send you a corsage like y'all did me. Smells so good.
what about Uncle Jimmy Short? Do you remember him?
Oh, do I remember Uncle Jimmy Short? I remember him way back for high school days. He had this little cart that he'd push around, and he'd come down during recess time and park out there, and we'd go buy ice cream and things he sells.
Okay, so it was more than just popcorn and peanuts.
Oh, yes.
He had ice cream.
They had what he called a hokey pokey ice cream or something that was in a cake, and it was delicious. I think that was the name of it. And he had other things than just popcorn, and he'd have ice cream and have candy bars. And then it used to be right there, the First National Bank, see, was right next to the Opera House. And they used to have a Greek that had hot tamales, the best homemade hot tamales you ever ate. And he'd sit right there on that corner with this big container. And before you'd go home, you'd drive out there and get a dozen hot tamales and take them home and eat them. They were real hot tamales, too.
They were hot
Yeah,
tamales.
hot. Delicious. And the old First National Bank on that corner was a beautiful building, too, as well as the Opera House. It looked like just all one building.
Do you remember the balconies on the buildings? Of either Marx's or the Opera House?
I remember the boxes, and then the balcony went all the way across like that. And I'll tell you where the banister.
No, I was talking about on the outside.
Oh, on the outside? Oh, no, it was just
Okay, so
windows,
they'd taken the
just
balconies
windows.
down by then.
The architect was just windows and just outside with the doors and all.
Okay, what were you about to tell me on the balconies on the
On
inside?
the balcony inside, they had these lovely banisters. And I think I know where some of those banisters are.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you do.
And I believe you maybe, if I believe Nancy Edis, if she still has a chair that Augusta had, I think she'd be very happy to give it to you, and might tell you some of the other girls. Dolly Trussell might have gotten, I don't know, but it was at the time that I had left Marx's then. But cause I met a lady one day, and she said, did you ever sell Red the Way? I said, honey, I've sold Red the Way everywhere in Meridian except Cressy. They paid me enough, I'd have gone there. William Klein and Company, I don't know whether any of y'all ever remember that, but Mr. Simon Klein was owner in there, and he was an uncle to Janie Meyer, and she was in Mary's age, your mother's age, you know, and Maud Bloom, and Mr. Winner brought, Mr. Klein brought William Bloom out of New York, just a young man, to manage to buy Red the Way for, and does he know Red the Way and for us. So he came to work there, and then he decided to open a shop of his own.
And you worked for him.
And I was working in the Red the Way then. So three of us went with Mr. Bloom to open his very first Liberty shop. Beulah Clark, Maud Harrington and I, we left there and went with him, and marked all the merchandise, all the going there. And then, while we worked quite late at night, and I was a little underweight, so I had to rest a while, and that's when Winnie Stucker went around there then to go to work for him. And then later, Mr. Bloom moved the shop around next to Wideman Street, and he did a beautiful business there. But he's dead and gone now, but he sure knew clothes.
He knew pool too. He came out and taught my brother a lesson or two.
Yeah, and he loved tennis.
Yes.
Good sport. Well, see, he very unfortunate. Maud Meyer, Mr. Simon Klein's niece, they were playing golf, and Mr. Bloom hit her in the eye with his golf stick, and she had to have a glass eye, and she never was very happy like that. However, they had two lovely children. Sarah Bloom was a beautiful girl, and had William, the one son, and but they used to have us out when we were working at night, marking merchandise for the Liberty shop. They'd have us out to eat, and impressed me most with the cocktails. Ms. Bloom would take just a plain cracker, put a little butter on it, and melt it and dash your paprika, and it's delicious with. And I use it a lot of times now, and I always think about her. So that was the beginning of the real Liberty.
Alexander had a long and celebrated career with the Metropolitan Opera. But his roots are right here in Mississippi. In his final performance in Meridian, John Alexander.
Che very, very best. She got him a coat of the very, very best, and the soldier put it on. Oh, soldier, soldier, won't you marry me with your musket, pipe, and drum? Oh, no, sweet maid, I cannot marry you, for I have no boots to put on. So off she went to the grand estate. She got him a pair of the very, very best. She got him a pair of the very, very best, and the soldier put them on. Oh, soldier, soldier, won't you marry me with your musket, pipe, and drum? Oh, no, sweet maid, I cannot marry you, for I have a wife at home. they said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Mississippi. They said, well, is that right? Yeah, I heard there's Mississippi like islands of intelligence in the sea of ignorance. I said, no, man, it borders the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
End up in my things that are frame.
Yes. You got me talking like that now. I guess it just sort of rubs off on you, don't it?
If someone will pay attention to who bids the highest on this, we'll do it on an honor system. Believe me, somebody will see you before you get out. You'll leave it. Okay, we've got an 1894 Grand Opera House program of the Wilson Barrett, famous London company. You remember them? They did Claudian, or Claudian. I assume it's about Claudius. Anyway, I will start the bidding at $35. Are there any bids for a program of such rare archival experiences?
Next time you find yourself in West Alabama and you're looking for a good place to eat, let me tell you about this place. It buys all it's just a half a mile from the Palm Beach Bridge, and it's located high on a beautiful ridge. Now everything's fresh there. We got no fridge out to eat, sell, fish, camp. Now eat, sell, catfish and fries like a good old hush puppets too. And we sell some coleslaw there. That's the Colonel sure could use. All the ice cream on the table for you. And three of the tables have a pretty river view. Weather is raining, the sky's always blue. Over East Sales Fish Camp. Break it! You just move your butt over to Butler, Alabama, Highway 19 there east. And you can get the best food around. Now, that's to say the least. So the next time you sit with nothing to do, and you wanna shake away your blue-collar blues, grab your old lady, bring the little ones too, out to eat sales fish camp.